I think one of the philosophical pieces was always the piece about open door. You know, that there was coffee, there was tea, we started to build a library. Really, the goal was to create a space that anyone could come by. Space in Hannah Hall was a really pretty disused classroom and offices that no one had been in for a while. And when we got in there, literally there was no furniture, it was a mess, the ceilings were horrible, it was dark, it was dingy, the carpet was crappy, and there were a couple of phones sitting on the floor, and it was Mary and I. Here at BG was really important to me. And we had great fun. We always worked from a feminist agenda. There was never a lot of money in those early days, so we had to be creative, and we had amazing supporters. So one of the things that I really remember is how women and men and people in the community would arrive with gifts. They'd come in and ask what they could do to help. We had good support on campus, but it was really that sense of community feel. I think the other thing I'd say that I think of now, I never meant to be at BG this long, and I was lucky enough to move to work in other areas on campus and do a fair degree of work with other diversity initiatives, is that the Women's Center became the home for some groups and people who didn't at that point have a home. So, for example, the LGBT student groups, we reached out to them. We provided a space for them to meet. They'd previously sort of been floating around and meeting off campus. And they still meet there, and I think there's some sense, before there was a resource center, before there was resources in student affairs for them. And I can think of many groups of students who perhaps previously didn't feel like they had a home on campus, where the Women's Center stood for a variety of people, for women, families, for students who were parents, for parents on campus, a number of communities of color, groups that were looking for a place that was their home. So I think the Women's Center also set a model for work, and many people involved in the Women's Center then became activists around other diversity and multicultural issues on campus, as well as being an education, folks who were willing then to bring ideas and issues across campus. So the Women's Center has always been a very special place.
Again, we're celebrating and honoring newly hired, newly promoted, newly tenured women faculty, and we invite other women faculty to join us in that celebration. It's a very nice, positive event for campus. I don't think we take enough time to kind of stop and really celebrate the accomplishment of faculty, and specifically faculty that are marginalized, which may be women faculty, women of color faculty, faculty of color. I think in particular, taking a moment to celebrate our accomplishments as an institution and the accomplishments of those individuals is very important. We're always working, and sometimes we need to take a deep breath and pat each other on the back before we move forward to more work.
All of the degrees that were represented by our small staff, as we would put together the newsletter, we just fold and collate and staple, but it was a great time, and we all loved and supported each other so much, and it's something you don't really realize until you get out into the world, that when you work in an environment where people are really trying to promote positive change, that it takes positive people to do that. And they're not, we're at the Women's Center. We're not the men-hating, feminazis. I hate that word, but, some people say that. But they're caring people who are patient, and they were patient with me as I was learning. And together we achieved a lot that we couldn't have done on our own. So I'll always definitely remember that time.
The BGSU Women's Center, I think, has had a great impact on campus. It has very varied programming that reaches diverse populations. Its mission, as I understand it, is to provide services for women, students, faculty, administrators, staff, and community members. So it's a very wide mission. And it seeks to meet that mission through very diverse programming, working with these different groups. I think it provides a space on campus for those of us who are interested in gender and sexuality issues, to have conversations in an academic setting, and then also to engage in kind of co-curricular activities and conversations with the community, which are sometimes not as prevalent on campus as they should be. I think the work that Mary Kruger, the director of the Women's Center, has done in recent years to really think about the needs of students who are also parents and mothers in particular has been extraordinary. It's really raised the awareness across campus about those issues and created ways to really provide resources for that population.
About Open Door, you know, that there was coffee, there was tea, we started to build a library. Really the goal was to create a space that anyone could come by. It was a space for, as Mary would have said as her motto, it was for women and the people who loved and respected women. So men and family members were always welcome, and many, many men played influential roles in our programs. But I think there was that real sense of having a space that could just be a safe space. You could come and spend time during the day. You could come to a program. You could come and hang out. You could come and say, could our group meet here? And that was a great way to bring people in to find out what the Women's Center was about. And I came to Bowling Green in 1997. There was not a Women's Center. And I'd heard rumors one was going to begin, and I wanted to be part of that involvement. So I actually took an opportunity for one of my classes to go and shadow our then provost, Dr. Chuck Middleton, and he agreed to let me shadow him for the day. And during the day, it gave me an opportunity to talk to him about the new Women's Center. And he literally said, well, I've hired this new director, and called who was to be the founding director, Mary Kruger, on the phone from his office and put me on the phone with her to talk to her. And by the end of the day, I had a graduate assistantship. She never got to really interview me or decide whether she wanted to hire me, so she took it on faith. And there actually hadn't been budgeted a graduate assistant, so I felt very lucky.
My name's Denise Robb. I'm a second-year graduate student in the College Student Personnel Program at BGSU, and I'm currently doing my second-year practicum experience in the Women's Center. Thinking about what I will take from my experience at the Women's Center, it's really been an experience for me to be able to integrate my own academic interests and make sure that I'm actually reaching a student population that I'm really invested in working with. So I'm currently working on some research with parenting students and pregnant students, and kind of realizing that all of my interests that I've had throughout my professional and then academic career have all really come into focus and become this entity at the Women's Center, and having the ability to work with Mary and the other staff at the Women's Center to really create this project and work for some positive change for the BGSU campus has been really meaningful. So I think ultimately that's what I'm going to take from my experience with the Women's Center, is knowing that there are people on campus that really care really deeply about a student population that is largely invisible, and are making strides to really improve the experience for students who are parents, and particularly women who are mothers.
I've presented my research at the Women's Center. I've attended many events organized by the Women's Center, and I've had the pleasure of collaborating with the Women's Center, the director Mary Kruger, as well as very talented staff of grad students and professional staff that she's had across the years. It's helped me as an administrator to do those collaborations. I've been able to accomplish a lot more having such talented and strong partners working with me. It's also, I've appreciated the ability to have a space like the Women's Center to hold events at.
To know about these fantastic workshops which are happening at a place called Women's Center. The issues that women in general face. The issues vary from domestic violence to workplace discrimination, issues regarding contraception, legal rights, and many more. My research agenda deals with women's health. My specialization is in health communication, and my focus area is women's menstrual health. Although I was not certain when I started my association with the Women's Center that this would be my area of research focus, but it was on the fringe, and I thought that Women's Center and the activities that it provides strengthened my research focus and my dedication towards it. And just yesterday, March 25th, I defended my dissertation, which was titled as Knowledge, Attitude and Practices of Menstruation and Menstrual Hygiene of Men and Women in India, and its implications on health communication campaigns. So this is also one of the reasons why, or what made me constantly keep going back to the Women's Center. Actually gave me opportunities to present my research. It provided me with avenues to talk, discuss, get feedback on my research. Every time I would give a talk at the Women's Center and at other conferences, the participants, mostly women, they would jump to the opportunity of helping other women. My initial research focus was more geared towards India, and therefore even the advocacy part or the activism part was also more geared towards India. And so what would happen is that women would be willing to donate money, materials, etc. But later on in one of my discussions with Mary, she brought out this point that what about United States? Is United States not facing any issues regarding menstruation? What about the women over here? And it got me thinking that what do homeless women in the United States do? I got to thinking, and then in one of our later meetings, I proposed this project, which was also related to one of my classes, that why don't we start a project where we can go and collect sanitary pads and tampons and then distribute them freely, and create a system for that. This was my discussion with Mary, and she was instantly supportive of it. And actually the name, Keep It Flowing, it also comes from her. She was the one who suggested it, and I mean, it has a little punch to it and a pun to it as well. There's a play of words over there, but I think it did very, very good service, and it fit well to the project. So we just kept that, and I started working on the project, and I got initial help from one of my friend's mother, my friend Adriana. Her mother gave us an initial donation of close to maybe 4,000 or 5,000 tampons. So that's how we started, and then we tied up with the Panhellenic girls, and I have to thank Jessica over here. She did a fantastic job, and we got a lot of donations from these girls. And concerns that I had since the very beginning was this project was not about me, or it should not fade away with me moving out of Bowling Green. I am a student, I am a transient population of the university. I come and go. So one of the biggest concern was how to institutionalize, make it a part of the system. And Mary was generous enough to not only work with me, but to give Keep It Flowing a house, a home. So therefore now Keep It Flowing is has its home in the Women's Center, and if I understand correctly now, there's also student opportunities, assistantship and internship opportunities that can be offered for credit, and students can benefit from it. It can be made into a service learning project. You can also conduct research, create awareness, increase levels of knowledge about menstruation in the vicinity, and so there's so many opportunities, and Keep It Flowing needs to flow a little more.